So today we will be observing the sequential programming model. Okay. So you might be knowing that we have concurrent execution, parallel execution, and one is sequential execution, which is this. Okay. In the sequential program model, the function or processing requirements are executed in sequence. It is as same as the conventional procedural programming. Here the program instructions are iterated and executed conditionally, and the data gets transformed through a series of operations. So finite state machines and the flowcharts are used for modeling sequential program. The finite state approach represents the states, events, transition, and actions, whereas the flowchart models the execution flow. So we have observed the concurrent programming based on the state diagram. Now you will be observing the sequential programming model. So here also we have taken few example how to execute. Okay, the execution of functions in a sequential program model for the seat belt warning system is illustrated below. Okay, so seat belt warning. So seat belt warning, it is nothing but here. So when I wanted to drive any car vehicle, so obviously it is mandatory to wear the seat belt. Okay, and if I won't wear the seat belt, the engine will not on or the ignition will not take place. Okay, so that is something which we have to observe. So for doing this you require two conditions. One is your seat belt, you have whether put it or no, means you have weighed it or no, right? So seat belt on, seat belt off. Okay, and one more thing is that if seat belt is on, your ignition or your the engine should be on or engine should be off. So that is why we have this four condition. Okay, so that is what it is defined in this hash define on one, hash define off one, or hash define yes 1 or hash define no 0, right? So these are the four conditions. Void seat belt 1, wait for 10 seconds if check ignition equal to is on, if check seat belt is off. Okay, set timer, set alarm while check seat belt equal to off and check ignition key equal to on and time expired equal to no. So stop alarm. So you can see that if ignition is on, then what happens? If seat belt is off, then what happens? He will wait for 5 seconds of time, and still if you are not putting the seat belt, then immediately a alarm will on. That is the program which has been written in the sequential manner. Right? So it is going to check whether ignition is on or not. Yes, it is on. Whether seat belt is off or not, right? Means if it is off. If it is on, then what happens? This alarm will not blow or alarm will not be on. That is the meaning. And this is a program which has been sequentially executed. To do this one, he has made use of this flow chart, right? So state diagram is different and flow chart is different. State diagram is with respect to the event and action, and flow diagram it is with respect to the sequential execution of the program, right? So you can observe that ignition key is on. So he is waiting for some amount of second, right? He is going to check ignition is on. If it is on, see, if it is off, then what happens? It is in. So if ignition is off, then there is no need of setting any alarm because you are not driving. And if you are not driving, then what happens? No need of wearing this seat belt and all those stuff. Only we are bothered about when ignition is on, you have to wear seat belt. If you are not wearing a seat belt, you will get an alarm, right? Seat belt is on. If it is low, then alarm. If seat belt is on, if it is yes. So if seat belt is on, ignition is on, then it is finally going to this end. If ignition is on, seat belt is off, right? Seat belt is on, and if it is no condition, so it will come to this. So set timer for 5 seconds, set alarm. Again he is going to check ignition on. If it is yes, set alarm. If it is no, then end. Timer expand, stop alarm, then end. So this is a sequential program for seatbelt warning using a flowchart which is executed sequentially. Okay, then we have concurrent communicating process model. The concurrent or communicating process models concurrently executing task and process. So it is easier to implement certain requirement in concurrent processing model than the conventional sequential execution. Means what? No need of sequentially executing. We should go for the parallel execution, which is concurrent. Sequential execution leads to a single sequential execution of tasks and thereby leads to poor processor utilization. When the task involves IO waiting, sleeping for specified duration, if the task is split into multiple subtasks, it is possible to tackle the CPU usage effectively. See, now what is happening is that number of students are 47, the people who were present, right? Now in this 47 people, sequentially I need to check everyone whether seat belt is on, ignition is on. Then what happens? To check 47 people, it will take more number of time. Then what I will do, I will put in a concurrent type, and whatever the execution will be there, I will copy and paste for everyone. So then what happens? Whoever ignition is on, whoever seat belt is off, then everyone will get parallelly messages or alarm, right? So within a short duration of time, my execution will complete, and that is the usage of this concurrent program. See, concurrent program means executing sequentially, but parallelly it is given for everything. Okay, that is the thing which is present. Okay, however, concurrent processing model requires an additional overhead, right? Then it requires task scheduling, task synchronization, and communication. Okay, these are the usage of this concurrent communicating process model. So as an example, consider again the implementation of a seatbelt warning system using concurrent process, right? So we can split the task into multiple timer task for waiting 10 seconds, task for checking ignition task, ignition key status, task for checking the seat belt status, task for starting and stopping the alarm, and alarm timer task for waiting for 5 seconds. So whatever we were executing, everything sequentially. First check this one, next check this one, next check this one. Now what I am doing? I am doing parallelly. So I am reducing the time. That is the biggest advantage of this concurrent process model. Okay. The task cannot be executed them randomly or sequentially. We need synchronize their execution through, one second. Interrupt, right? So we will use events to indicate using these scenarios. So events is representing, see here, wait timer expire, right? Ignition underscore on, ignition underscore off, right? Seat belt on and seat belt off, right? So these are the keywords of execution of these events in this parallel processing, right? So I am going to create events. Wait timer expire, ignition on, ignition off, seat belt on, seat belt off, alarm timer start, alarm timer expire. So I am everywhere I am creating a task, right? So when I call this wait timer task, so it will be waiting for how many duration of time. The time is around 10 seconds. Ignition key status monitor. So every time I want to check whether ignition is on or off. Seat belt status monitor, whether it is on or whether it is off. Alarm control and alarm timer. Alarm control, it is for on and off, and alarm timer is for setting for 5 seconds. That is a thing which you are going to do parallelly, and these tasks have been executing parallelly. That is a one advantage. So you can observe there is a sub programs which has been related here, right? So this is a wait timer task. This is a ignition key status monitor. This is a alarm control task. This is a alarm task management, and this is seat belt state monitor, right? So while it is one, if seat belt on, set event belt on, reset event set off, else seat event off, reset event. So he is all making some condition, whether if it is on, whether it is off, whether seat belt is on, whether seat belt is off, if ignition is on, ignition is off. So parallelly he is going to execute and he is going to check. So set alarm start, so it is going to this sub program, wait for 5 seconds and return back to the main program, right? So here you can see wait timer start. So wait timer start is, it is for the sleep mode, which is for the 10 second. And ignition key status, so if ignition is on, is going to perform these things. So this is how he make the program to run in a parallel way, which will be very easy to know. So every time I will just inquire with these people, these events, and the task related event I am going to observe, and that is how my working procedure, it will be very fast, right? One more way which we call it as the, or method which we will follow in this embedded, is the object oriented model. The object oriented model is an object based model for modeling system requirement, right? We are assigning terms and all those things we will attach, right? And it will be also in a very simple way to execute. It disseminates a complex software requirement into a simple, well-defined pieces called objects. Object-oriented model brings reusability, maintainability, productivity in system design. So why they will write all programs in object-oriented type is that hardware they can reuse for multiple tasks. Okay, that is one advantage. And if there is any error, so I will be able to know which object or which task is having error. See, now this is a 5 task which has been created. So if this seat belt is not working, but other things are working fine, so I have to change only this part. Complete program no need to change, right? But that is not possible in this sequential part. Okay, so if this is not, if ignition is not on, then what happens? If this is the problem, then it will not go and check to other events only, right? So that is why we will not follow this sequential. We have to follow the concurrent, and specifically with respect to this object oriented type. Okay, it disseminates a complex software requirement into a simple, well-defined pieces called objects. Object-oriented model brings reusability, maintainability, and productivity. In the object-oriented modeling, object is an entity used for representing or modeling a particular piece of system. Each object is categorized by a set of unique behavioral and a class. Right. So you might be observing this, what is an object, what is an variable, what is an function, what is an task, what is an class, right? So you have n number of things which you have observed in the C programming, right? So why we have to define this? Because we wanted to make things simpler. Now examination form, it is present. For every student, they are not going to build one task which has been provided. So they will build a class, right? And they will tell that register number 1. So register number 1 to register number 120. So everything it will be put into a class, and inheritance we will do, and we will just copy and paste. Right, and it will create on its own. When one USN will come, it will create separate data sheet for that class. Right. So suppose say student 1. Student 1, all information it will be there, like student name, student USN, father name, for mother name, address, right? Every details will be there, which are the subjects you are going to take and everything. Then when I enter student 2, automatically whatever student 1 data will be there, variables that will be defined and accessed for the student 2 also. And he is going to use that for entering his purpose, right? So that is the difference which you can observe in this class. So little bit of C concept which is going to be used here, right? So this is our object oriented part. Then this is a class is an abstract description of a set of objects and it can be considered as a blueprint of the object. A class represents the state of an object through member variables and object behavior through member functions. So I was saying there is a private function, there is a public function. So public if you define what it will be there, private if you define what will be there. So all information which is there which have been generalized here and it is related to the embedded part which has been taken care, right? So there is no complete programming part which you will learn, but programming we have observed in the lab only, right? So that was there in the lab part. So the member variables are and member functions of a class can be a private, public or protected. So there are three possibilities. Private, it is only for the a certain section of people to utilize. Public, anybody can observe the variables and he can give the input. And protected is this having nothing but a given a password and protecting your data. That is the main concept here, right? The concept of object and class brings abstraction, hiding and protection level. Next comes with respect to the embedded firmware design and development. So to implement all these things, again you require a firmware, you require a design concept and how you are going to develop this product finally. That is a thing which is present in the embedded part. So in this firmware, it is responsible for the controlling action of the peripheral, right? So example is here UART or example of your DC motor. So DC motor device is there. You have a Keil software, you have a flash magic to dump. So LPC 1768, that board specification, port, GP, general purpose IO values you should be knowing, and based on that values you are going to modify in the main program and that you are going to club it, the hardware and the software, so that your DC motor will work. And when I take a DC motor, two things it is required. One is rotation, in which direction you should rotate the DC motor, whether in a clockwise direction or whether in a anti-clockwise direction. And one more parameter which you have to observe here is the speed control of this DC motor, right? At what speed it should rotate, that is also one thing. So this is a hardware specification which I said. For the software part, you require the coding, how you are going to achieve. So when I am writing a code for this DC motor, you should be aware of the delay specification. So how much delay you are going to give for this hardware, then it will be very easy, right? So the embedded firmware is responsible for controlling the various peripheral of the embedded hardware and generating response in accordance with the functional requirement. Firmware is considered as the master brain of the embedded system. Imparting intelligence to the embedded system is one-time process and it can happen at any stage. For most of the embedded product, the embedded firmware is stored in the permanent memory, which is your ROM, and they are non-alterable by any element, because read-only memory only you can read, you cannot alter the main program. Designing embedded firmware require understanding of a particular embedded product hardware like various components. That is what I was telling. So pin configuration number, pin number, everything it should be well versed, means you should be having thorough knowledge of the hardware specification. The pin number, that will be very easy for the execution part. Good. Embedded firmware development process start with the conversion of the firmware requirement into a program model using the modeling tool. So when I want to go for the DC motor as an example, so DC motor specification should be clearly present. What is the software or program which you are going to write in, whether in .c or whether .asm or .vsdl or .v file. So all these firmware requirements, the design specification, everything it should be defined prior. Once the program model is created, the next step is the implementation of the task and actions by capturing the model using a language which is understandable by the target processor or a controller. So processor and target device, it will be in a binary, and that binary it should be displayed the actions, what is the response, and finally whether my DC motor is working or not. That is the example which is given. The firmware design approaches for the embedded product is purely dependent on the complexity of the function to be performed and the speed of operation required. So these are the two observations which I have to do in the thing. For example, I have taken UART. For that UART, there were different baud rate given. At that baud rate, if I change, then I will observe what is the output. So if I give 9600, it was not working. So if I give 4800, then it was working output. So you should know at what speed it will be working. And based on that speed, if you explain, then it will be understandable. That is why the speed of teaching also an important factor. Otherwise what happens, I will be just reading out this loud and you will not follow. And if you want to follow, then obviously earlier topics you should be knowing, and you should not be absent. If you are absent, then it is very difficult for you to understand the basic concept. Two basic approaches are used for embedded firmware design. One is the conventional method, one more is your embedded operating system based approach. This conventional procedure we generally call it as a super loop based approach. So these two approaches we will be discussing now. So what is the super loop based approach? A super loop based firmware development approach is adopted for applications that are not time critical and where response time is not so important. Okay. So if I give assignment and if I don't keep a deadline for that one, how many people will submit? You know, right? So that is what he is trying to make you understand. The super loop based firmware development approach is adopted for applications that are not time critical and where response time is not so important. It is very similar to a conventional procedural programming where the code is executed task by task. The task listed at the top of the program code is executed first and the task below are executed at the next part. In a multiple task based system, each task is executed in serial in this project. You'll be knowing serial in, serial out, first in, first out, first in, last out, last in, first out, last out, last in. Right, so there are many concepts which will be present in this super loop. The firmware execution for this will be, so he has given these steps. Configure the common parameter, that is your design specification. Perform the initialization, that is the next part. Initialize your memory and register, that is the next part. Start the first task and execute. So first I will give something, you execute, then execute second, then execute third, and completely at the end you have to go for the last task. Jump back to the first task and follow the same flow. If anyone is not working, go back to the previous, start executing and then go to the next task. This is a super loop based approach. So that is what we were trying to do in the sequential part. If ignition is on, so till that on I have to wait. Otherwise I am not going to perform. That is the task or the super loop which has been present. So you can observe in this flow diagram, or you can observe the C program code is in void main, configuration, initialization, while one, task 2, task n. And this is how you are going to write a program in the super loop based approach way, right? And generally it is in the C programming type. So you will be knowing for every programming we do the same thing. You take any program, we initialize, we declare, we configure, and we start executing sequentially line by line. Almost all tasks in embedded application are non-ending and are repeated indefinitely throughout the operation. This repetition is achieved by using an infinite loop. Hence the name super loop based approach. The only way to come out of this loop is either a hardware reset or an interrupt assertion. Right? So you will come to know how to get out of this loop. Advantage, it doesn't require any operating system. It is a schedule based on the scheduling type. The priorities are fixed and the order is which is because priority order value and it will execute. Application of this super loop approach is the very low cost. Right? Example you take with respect to the toys. Okay, toys and all those things it will be executing with this open super loop part. So if you press this key, then only it will function. Otherwise, it will be in the loop, right? It will be never ending. So that is one example which you can take or give in this part. For example, reading, writing data to and from a card using a card reader requires a sequence of operation like checking the presence of the card, authenticating the operation, then reading and writing. So this is example of nothing but your ATM example which is taken. It should strictly follow a specified sequence and the combination of the tasks constitute a single task, namely the data read and write. A typical, again it is same part. Drawbacks of super loop based approach is that any failure in any part of the single task will affect the overall system. That is the problem. See, now one student has entered, next student is entering, third student is entering. If I don't make in a parallelly, if one of the student is not getting the output, then next student it will be not allowed to execute. Why? Because he is not completed the task. That is the problem. That is why usually we will not follow this sequential, we will not follow this super loop. We will follow the concurrent part. And what is the advantage over there is that if any part is not working, you will come to know which section is not working, and you can check that only check that section to know what is not functioning. And when I debug that one, then my main program it will be working. That is the main intention which is trying to do. But for smaller application, don't require any concurrent parallel, we can go for the sequential programming only. So it will reduce the cost and all other stuff which you can have. So lack of real timeliness, which is one of the drawbacks which is present here. Embedded operating system based approach contains operating system which can be a general purpose or a real time to host the user application. Right? So it is generally examples which is taken. Use of GPOS in embedded product emerges the demigration of an embedded system and general computing system in terms of the application. It is just like a driver software which has been cleared. So real-time operating system which has been there. So take an example of an washing machine. So water inlet, power supply, cloths, the motor will start to rotate. And these are the things which has been done. Now you see one task is over, so it will rotate the motor for certain amount of time, then it will go or it will change its event from rotating the thing to the rinsing part. Then after rinsing, drying part. After drying, then door open. So these are the things real time. So if it is not working, it will be stopped. Right? So those are the things example of a real time which we can observe in this part. For embedded firmware development, we can use either a target processor or a controller specific language, generally known as the application specific or a assembly language or a low level language. A target processor controller independent language, like we are going to have C, C++, Java, etc., commonly known as a high level language. A combination of assembly and high level language, we call it as a firm development languages which is present. Assembly level language, so you will be having machine level language, so it will be in which type. It can be a binary value, it can be a decimal value, it can be an octal value, or it can be a hexadecimal value. Usually, normally, all embedded system devices will be running their program in the hexadecimal. There won't be any binary decimal value or octal. It will be in hexadecimal. So we are also running program in Keil software now that is taking values in the hexadecimal. We can give input in what you call decimal coded data, right? For that we have to give normal. If I wanted to execute it, you can set the result will be there all in hexadecimal, not in decimal value. Okay. Sir, if I want to have values in decimal value, what should I do in the program? You may ask. So you should write one more program which we call it as a conversion flow program from hexadecimal to binary decimal value. And that program we need to initialize, we need to add to our main source program. Then when we are running, we will get output in the decimal value, not in the hexadecimal value. That also we can do, right? So assembly language is a human readable notation or a machine language, is a processor understandable language. It is represented in a consists of a binary values which is from zeros and one, is made readable by using specific symbol called mnemonics. Okay, mnemonics are nothing but like ATC, ATD, ATH. So those are the values. Hence machine language can be considered as an interface between processor and a programmer. Assembly language and machine language are processor control dependent, and an assembly language written for one processor control family will not work for the another. Assembly language program is a task of writing processor specific machine code in a mnemonic form, converting the mnemonic into the actual processor instruction and associated data using the assembler program. I'll just take one example for this one. So I'll just share the screen now so that this PDF will be there. I'll just show one of the PDF. Simple, I have taken this as an example. So this is a white screen. Alright. So now what you do is that we will write like this move. Okay. R1 and R2. Right. Now this is the instruction and these are the register value. Right. And this processor will not understand. Okay, the processor will not understand. This is a user are nothing but me. So I know I wanted to move data R1 to R2, right? So processor will not understand this move R1 comma R2. Okay, so processor will understand mnemonic. Okay, so what is this mnemonic? So this move, okay, so I'll write here move, I'll write here source, I'll write here destination. Okay, now source is register 1, destination is register 2. Now source, it can be memory. Okay, destination can be register. Source can be register, destination can be memory. So there are multiple things here, right? Operand 1 and operand 2. So generally operand 1 I will write it as source and operand 2 I will write it as destination. And this is move instruction. Move is known by the user, move indicating that from source to destination data should be moved. That is the thing. But processor will not understand this move. So this move source and destination, he will be writing it as a, right, suppose say 0 0, and it will be source and destination. Okay, now what I will do, I'll take one more color. So what I will do, 0 0, Now source I will take it as register 1 and destination I will take it as register 2. Okay, register 1 and register 2. Next I will go 0 1. Okay, now here it will be register 1 and here it will be memory. Okay, 1 0 I will write here memory and here I will write register. I will not give 1 and 2 also, I will just put register. Okay, now one more I will give 1 1. I will write here memory and I will write here memory. Right, so you can understand 0 0 0 1 1 0 1 1. These are all mnemonic which I will assign to move. So move is common. Okay, moving from register to register, moving from register to memory, moving from memory to register, moving from memory to memory. So all I am doing memory operation, but operands here are different. Okay, one is register, one is register, one is register, one is memory, one is memory, one is register, one is memory, and one is memory. Now this 0 0 0 1 1 0 1 1 all are with respect to this move instruction. So the processor here for user it is very clear, move R1 comma R2, so it belongs to this value. So processor needs to identify this mnemonic which is 0 0. Okay, that is the thing which you can find. I think quiz is open, correct? So I'll just stop the recording.